Joining me now is Shelden Williams, played a decade of pro ball, has played overseas. Many Duke fans certainly remember his playing days at Duke. Shelden, thanks for being with me.
Thank you for having me.
Let's start with this whole story involving Chris Paul and his family, that they would be have their hands put on them at a game, game 4, a Mavericks fan, going too far over the line, physically touching his mom, his wife. What's your reaction to that as a player?
Well, when I first saw that, or at least heard the news, I thought it was another case of a drunken fan, trying to, overstep his boundaries type thing. Because we've seen a lot of drunken fans get a little bit too, cross over the line a little bit too much. And then when I saw there was a 14-year-old kid that was there with his mom, I'm like, okay, what actually transpired for that to even happen? Like, for whatever reason, nobody should put a hand on another person anyway, let alone, being a player's family, or even, the mom and the wife as well. But the fact that this is getting out of hand, where we're seeing more and more cases where people feel like they buy the ticket, they can say and do whatever they want. It's getting out of hand, and NBA needs to do something. I'm not sure what exactly what they need to do, but we're seeing more and more of these cases. Because if you see these people out on the street, you're not saying these things, you're not doing these things to them, directly. But when you get into the venue of the ticket that you bought, and all of a sudden things become differently, just like things become differently when you behind your phone screen, talking mess on, social media.
I was really surprised, like you said, that when I finally found the video and I saw that it was a young kid, I think we'll get more details as to what exactly happened, because I don't know if there's video of the actual altercation, but, just to see Chris Paul's face and see him so visibly upset, you say that the league needs to do more. And I think there is a problem here with fans behaving badly, period, whether it's, running onto the court, disrupting the game, or just heckling, saying things that are completely inappropriate and out of bounds. And as you said, this latest step, which is way over the line, which is actually putting your hands on another human being. How many experiences did you have as a player where, you had to deal with heckling that you maybe felt was over the line, or you saw fans behaving in a way and you just thought, we don't deserve to be in an environment like this?
Well, I've been in different venues. I mean, one of the worst venues, I have to go back to college, back when Maryland was in the ACC. That was by far the worst venue for Duke players to go into. Like, we ran out the tunnel, and people either spitting on us, yelling at us, saying all kinds of, inappropriate racial things. Like, that happens all the time when I was playing against Maryland. That was something that I wasn't really used to. Coming from, high school at the time, we didn't have, other than, people just kind of, saying different, heckling things, nothing real personal, but didn't have that. Then you have situations here and there in the pros, also being overseas, playing overseas. We have a lot of things like that because they actually are able to walk on the court. And we had situations where they touching players while they're on the court during the game. And that's something that I've never seen in the NBA. But the fact that I'm supposed to be playing professionally and we're not protected, and somebody can sit here and walk from their seat to where we at on the court and touch us, that was a very eye-opening experience.
I didn't even think about the fact that that kind of inappropriate heckling would exist at the collegiate level. I mean, we've heard of instances in these pro arenas that have gone too far. But, as far as the NCAA or the NBA getting involved in this, what can they do? I mean, what needs to be done just to make sure that not only as a player, players feel comfortable with that, they can have their families at games and not have to worry about fans doing ridiculous things?
Yeah, that's the question that I don't know the answer to. I mean, I know I've seen people saying, oh, they banned for life, but is it really a ban? Like, you can put on a hat and sneak in, that type of thing. Like, is it really banned for life? That type of thing. You might not go for the rest of the season and then try your luck again next season, whatever. But the fact that they trying to implement things, I'm not sure what exactly is something that you actually can do outside of maybe giving somebody, some type of jail time or something like that, where it goes on your record, or I don't know what it can be, but for something that can kind of strike fear into people and be like, you know what, this is going to be more of a lasting effect as I get older. I don't want this following me, that type of thing. So I'm not sure exactly what needs to be done, but something to the effect where they make a choice like this, then it still follows them throughout the rest of their life.
Yeah, absolutely. And for Chris Paul, who's such a visible player, who's been such a visible representation for all of the players collectively, I mean, to have this happen to him, how difficult is it as a player when you're in an environment like this, whether it's in the college game, like you mentioned, or overseas, to have to swallow your pride, take a step back? I mean, you saw him get physically upset and shaken. And like you said, this was basically a teenager who stepped out of line. How do you sort of process that as a professional athlete when people are doing things that are way beyond what's appropriate?
Well, there's two types of players that kind of handle this. One, they're kind of shaken up where they're not able to actually figure out how to channel their emotions. And then there's another player where they using all that aggression and they taking it and they really putting it into whoever guarding them, whoever's trying to defend them against that team. And I'm sure that with Chris Paul and the player that he is and the future Hall of Famer that he is, I'm sure he's going to channel that into a really great game and bring his team back from this 2-2 tie. And Dallas Mavericks going to have their hands full.
Yeah. Let's jump around the league a little bit too outside of that series, because this Warriors-Memphis series has been incredibly physical on the floor. John Morant, as of this taping, is probably not available for tonight's game. And you know, what Steve Kerr said before that series even started, this was going to be the most physical series that they have had so far. And now you've got guys breaking the quote unquote code, so to speak. I mean, let's kind of start with that. There is an understanding within the league that you cannot injure a player in a way that would take their season away from them, take their livelihood away from them. Is that right? I mean, are we seeing something that is going beyond what is fair in this series with all the physicality that we've seen?
Breaking the code to a certain extent, yes, that does exist. I don't think that any code was broken with this. It was unfortunate that it happened. He kind of swiped down and unfortunately kind of got his knee, and you saw the knee kind of rattle a little bit. But I don't think he intentionally, looked down and purposely was trying to grab his knee there, intentionally hurt him. I know in playoffs, fouls are a lot harder in the playoffs than they are in the regular season because they mean more. But the thing is, I don't think anything really dirty happened. Now you can say about the Draymond because it was an act of swinging at the head and then the pulling as well. And he's good about trying to play things off. And Draymond has a reputation, so that whole thing. But the Dylan Brooks thing, I didn't think that was a issue to get suspended for a game or even kicked out, that type thing. But I understand the referees in the league are trying to make a point, trying to make sure that it doesn't get out of hand for a lot of these players because people want to see these players play at the highest level and be healthy at that time as well. But go back to your point, I don't think any code was being broken. It just that it's unfortunate that Ja was in a situation where he's not able to play next game. I was looking forward to this series because I think they were up 3-1 against them in the regular season, and I thought it was going to be really exciting because a team that it's not a knock, but a team that doesn't know better because they haven't been experienced enough to be in that situation was going to be a threat because they were going to be a hungry team to play hard, play with a lot of energy against a experienced team that's finding its way back to being fully healthy again. So I was really excited watching that game, and unfortunately, things do happen. But Memphis, on the other hand, they've been playing well without Ja, so don't count them out yet. So hopefully it still goes 6 to 7 games, but I'm looking forward to that series.
Is there something about an easiness that comes with being an inexperienced or naive team making a deep playoff run where, you don't know how high the stakes are or you're not getting towards the tail end of your career and you can play without the weight of expectations? I feel like people have been waiting for Warriors fans have been waiting for this team to get reassembled, to show up in the playoffs, to have a deep run, to make it to the finals. And you've got this Memphis team that, like you said, I mean, it's not a knock on them, but maybe not knowing any better is advantageous in that circumstance.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's great for Memphis. I mean, they've been an up-and-coming team for the last couple of years. They are a team that people kind of count out, the first year they got kind of together when Iguodala didn't want to go there. And they had a chip on their shoulders, not only from Ja Morant, but the whole team. And they all play like that. Now look from just 2 years ago to where they are now. And they are actually playing against a team that Iguodala is playing for. Unfortunately, he's not playing. It would have been kind of, more meaningful if that was happening. But we can't, go off of our, injuries and things like that. Those do come up. But the fact that this team knows that they actually are a team that needs to continue to build bricks to get to that point where they want to be a championship team, I think they're doing it the right way. Unfortunately, sometimes luck does fall into it, and they need some luck to get into a situation where they make a good run and everybody stay healthy.
You know, the Sixers looked like this thing was going to be over early because of Joel Embiid's injury. And now that he's back on the floor, he has seemed to re-energize this entire group. And you saw James Harden absolutely go off in the last game. Just starting with Harden and his performance. And we've seen many, many times he's capable of turning in these incredible marquee performances where he just shows up and all of a sudden he blows everybody away. I mean, is it possible to get a sense in the locker room ahead of time that one of your star players, one of your best players is going to have a night like that?
I do at times. I want to say one of my experiences when I was playing with the Boston Celtics and we were in the playoffs, we were not playing well right at the All-Star break. And all of a sudden, the last month and a half, they kind of turned the switch. And I seen it personally, and I'm like, on the inside, I couldn't believe how things were like just much more serious. Like it's almost like a unwritten rule, like a certain day came up and all of a sudden it was no laughter, no talking, it was straight business. And then going into the locker room, heading into the first game, all of a sudden, we see KG, we see Paul Pierce, we see Ray Allen, we see Rasheed Wallace. You know, these guys all are not playing around. They normally, it was kind of like joking around and laughing and people making jokes to try to make things light. But then when seeing this all of a sudden happening, it was more so just silence. It was very eerie at the time. Like I didn't know what to do. And so I followed suit, like, I'm not gonna say anything either, that type of thing. So, but to see that happening, and knowing that they are taking up to another level, it was amazing just to kind of watch and be a part of, because I didn't see that from other teams I played for, but it was great to actually be on it. Obviously, I was on the team with 4 or 5 different Hall of Famers as well.
I remember that locker room actually because I was working in Boston at the time, and I'll always remember that locker room because, like you said, of how many Hall of Famers were in there and how interesting they were. And just to cover on the outside, I mean, I remember a couple times with KG, way after the game, he would make you wait. He would make you stand outside his locker forever, 45 minutes, an hour, whatever it was. He could do whatever he wanted. And people would wait because every so often he would sit down and seemingly really open up and offer like this wisdom. He'd get really analytical. I mean, you know him so much better than the rest of us do. He's such a smart mind, a thorough thinker, loves the game of basketball. When you think about that locker room and having Paul Pierce in there and Ray Allen in there, what do you remember most fondly about that time being in that locker room with so many special guys and a coach like Doc as well?
Yeah, so when I got to Boston, this is probably about year 5 for me, I think. And people was like, "Oh, welcome to the NBA." I'm like, "What do you mean welcome?" I mean, this is like my 5th year. And I get there, and the way things were ran from top to bottom, organization down to the coaching staff, down to the players, it reminded me of being back at Duke, how things were, everybody was held accountable no matter who you were. And I was like, oh, now I understand what you mean by welcome to the NBA, playing for a top program like that. So it was awesome to kind of see how me being year 5, and my routine was, hey, practice at 10 o'clock. I'm always there 2 hours before, so I want to go ahead and get my workout in, my running in, my lifting in, and eat some breakfast, and then get ready for practice. And I'm looking, and guys like KG and Ray Allen, year 11, year 12, year 15, whatever it is, they already in the gym at these times before practice starts to get their work in. I'm like, for them to be year 12, year 13, whatever it is, and future Hall of Famers, and they still putting this much attention, no matter how much they accomplish in this league, this much attention and detail into their craft every single day. Just seeing that, I'm like, it did nothing but inspire not only me but other players on the team, because we have no excuse. Like, we all banged up, we all tired, we all get into our feelings sometimes. But the fact that they're doing this night in, night out, there's no excuses for anybody else.
How important is it to be a high character player in the NBA or have that kind of motivation? Because I think one of the things that has struck me about this year's playoff run for so many of these teams is, you might not have the big superstars on the Lakers and Nets making deep runs, but you do have like these really earnest Marcus Smarts or what have you, who just are ready to go to work, who show up, who have seemingly flipped the switch, and who are competing and are still around. I mean, how much does that actually matter, having those intangibles? And granted, you're talking about Hall of Famers who not only have those intangibles, but also have, some of the most legendary shooting percentages and defensive abilities that we've ever seen in the league. So you're talking about a total package there with some of those guys. But if you split it apart, how much does raw talent matter in the NBA, and how much does just being a fundamentally sound and a high character guy matter in the NBA?
I think they all matter. I mean, with raw talent, you see a guy like Kuminga for the Warriors, a guy that is on a veteran team. He's playing with a lot of energy. He's playing with a lot of energy. And for him to not have that experience, we know that he's going to mess up. They know that he's going to mess up. But the fact that he's very energetic and he's willing and he's kind of just all over the place, that makes up for a lot of different mistakes that he may be making as well. When we talk about like good guys, I mean, yes, Boston's full of them. Shoot, even Miami Heat got a lot of just blue collar, hardworking guys where it meshes together when you have one agenda. And those guys we've been seeing for the last, 3-4 years now, about 3 years now. All these guys are just blue collar guys, no egos on the team. They genuinely love playing with each other. They love playing basketball, and you see that in their daily, everyday, playing basketball. So I think now that in itself is a skill these days, because there's so many people that can be, really talented, but bad guys, or bad locker room guys, should I say.
Yeah, and the bad locker room guys, I mean, that really does permeate through the entirety of the locker room, right? I mean, can you just have one guy who's just, can disrupt the chemistry of a playoff bound team?
Yeah, I mean, we all been, in a situation where we know somebody where we all having a good time and somebody come in and like, it kind of drains you and literally has, people kind of sucking the energy out of the room, that type of thing. So we all know those type of guys. We all have had those type of guys, either in our family or friend group and things like that. But the fact that you have that in your team, you hopefully have somebody else that kind of overcompensates that on the other end and, kind of just joyous, smiling. And that right there in itself is contagious. And then all of a sudden you start seeing a lot of people kind of go from there.
Mm-hmm. So two interesting larger points that you mentioned. One is, you talk about teams flipping the switch. Is that an issue in today's NBA with the regular season? I mean, is there a way around getting guys to stay motivated, to stay focused, to avoid that period where all of a sudden on the calendar, like you can see it to the day, the exact day, and all right, it's time to actually go to work and be serious? I mean, is the NBA, is the league in its entirety suffering from those kind of regular season doldrums?
I think so, to a certain extent. I mean, we see now from back when I played to what it is now, a lot more guys are now taking time off where they're resting and, those type of things, whatever. So you start seeing that a lot more. Granted, they're playing 82 games. They're playing into the playoffs. A lot of them are into deep in the playoffs. So it does put a lot of wear and tear in your body. So I get that as well as being an athlete as well. But, now on the other end, being a fan, you want to see some of these guys playing, especially in these big moments again in the game on ESPN or ABC, wherever it is. You want to see this type of thing going on. But I do think that people do kind of pick and choose, teams that they want to, I guess, relax on, rest on, or kind of coast, and have other guys kind of, pick up from there.
Mm-hmm. And was your experience inside the Celtics locker room with all those Hall of Famers, your welcome to the NBA moment, was that the only team that you played on over the course of your career where you really felt like, wow, this is the upper echelon of the NBA? I mean, you always talk about parity in the league and you want there to be that competitiveness across the East and the West. How many teams would you say operate at that hyper professional level? You think about the Lakers, you think about the Celtics, some of these programs that are, have dynasties to their credit, but how many programs actually operate like that?
Yeah, I mean, I was fortunate enough to be with the Celtics when we went to Game 7 in the finals. Unfortunately, we wound up losing to the Lakers that year. The only other team I can think of that I played for was kind of like that was like Denver. I think we had a really good team in Denver, but this is also the same year with a blockbuster trade where like 12, 13 guys that was in that Melo trade that went, to New York. But if that trade never went down, I think we had a really good chance to actually do some damage that year too, because we were a top 5, team in the West. We were playing really well, but we always had this looming cloud over us where is Melo going to stay? Is he going to stay? That type thing. So, but those are 2 programs that I know for sure that were pretty cool to be around because they had a lot of guys on the team where they were veteran guys. They've been playoff experience, and that's what we were shooting for.
Mm-hmm. Because you mentioned Denver, there's reports at least right now that Nikola Jokic is going to be the MVP again, back to back. How deserving is he of that honor, do you think?
Well, it's not the sexy pick, I know he had comparable numbers from when he won the last year as well. And I know the analytics is big into it as well. But for me, for a guy to be, on a team, which is not his fault either, 6 in the West and wind up losing the first round and then be MVP, I was like, you know what? I'm not sure. I thought Joel Embiid really had a really good shot at winning this year. And the way he's been playing this year, I thought it was his time. Unfortunately for him, they didn't give it to him. Even Giannis, the way he came on, especially late in the year, I thought he had a shot too. But the fact that, I was kind of going for Embiid because he hasn't gotten one yet. I know Giannis is deserving, Joker's deserving as well, but he hasn't gotten one. So I was kind of pulling for him because he hasn't gotten one yet.
I think Doc said something, I don't want to misquote him, but basically he said they're back in this series and have a shot because Joel's on the plane, because he's back with the team. Help us understand what it is that makes him, not just an all-star, but just so valuable to this team that he can come back from this facial fracture and concussion and completely change the face of this entire series and put them back into contention.
Well, he's a big that can score on all 3 levels. He can back you down in the post. He can shoot the mid-range jump shot, and he can shoot the 3. This guy, he's able to actually be 7 foot, be mobile enough to get by you. He's a guy that you can't take lightly because if you put somebody short on him, he's going to back you down. If you put somebody slow on him, he's going to get around you with, he's able to do his ball handling and get around you. So he's a tough matchup problem for whoever guards him. And it's very few guys in the NBA that are like that where we just don't know who to put on him because we can only hope that he has an off night, that type of thing. That's how Joel Embiid is. And granted, for him to come back and have his impact, he showed, at least to me, why he's an MVP type guy. Just like Giannis as well, too. But like I said, they all deserving. I just wish that he had it because he hasn't got one yet.
What do you think about Mike Brown as the new head coach in Sacramento? And the Lakers are, kind of looking around too. Who do you think is a good fit there as well?
Well, to be honest with you, I don't know what it is about Sacramento. It's coaches that go there that stay 2-3 years maybe, and then they kind of recycle somebody else and get, I'm not sure what exactly it is about Sacramento. I'm not sure if it's the office, front office type thing or what, but on paper, you look at their names on paper, you're like, oh, they're a talented team. But somehow they just can't connect the talent to, what results. And that's something that has been a factor for Sacramento for a long time. I'm not sure if Mike Brown is able to, change things around for their culture and things like that, but it sucks that Sacramento hasn't had a chance to be back in the glory days where we was over here seeing them do the cowbells and Peja, Stojakovic, Chris Webber and those guys, Bobby Divac, it was fun to watch when they had battles with, the Lakers and, Blazers back in the day. But as far as the Lakers, I'm not sure who's out there, but I feel like they need an old school tough coach. I think if they had an old school tough coach where he and his opinion is the only thing that matters, I think that might be something that they need. I'm not sure who's out there that can be that person outside of maybe Pop, but Pop is not leaving San Antonio. But outside of that, I'm not sure if anybody's able to be that person to say no to a lot of things that's going on in the Laker franchise.
Do you think they need that kind of attitude to deal with the Lakers front office, or is it figuring out a way to finesse around relationships with players?
I think it's all of the above. I mean, I think they all intertwine with each other. Granted, they have the best player that ever played in this generation with LeBron. But the fact that he's able to control a lot of things on the court and off the court, that might be an issue too. So like I said, if they had like an old school tough coach that runs things his way, I think they might have a chance to actually kind of see a turn for the Lakers. Granted, they all, 35 plus on the team too, so they need to change some things with that as well. But it's going to be interesting to see what they do with this offseason as well.
I've kept you too long already, so I don't want to keep you too much longer. But I think one of the things just on this point that fans are always curious about is the dynamic that exists between professional players and coaches. I mean, as a man who played in the pros and has played for a number of different coaches, some player coaches, some maybe not so much, can you describe what that dynamic really is? And for those star players, like you mentioned, KG and Ray, and playing with Paul Pierce and those guys, how much influence those players actually have, and how different it is from, say, a program like Duke or another, collegiate program that maybe doesn't mirror the pro game so closely.
Yeah, I mean, guys like that actually have done a lot of great things in this league, you have no choice but to listen to what they have to say. I mean, they're a part of it, especially they're a franchise guy. You build your roster and your team around that person to kind of complement what he does already. So that's going to be there already. The fact that you got to kind of draw a thin line between, all right, you're the player and I'm the coach and I'm the GM. It got to be some kind of line where you don't kind of cross over. And a lot of times I think it's kind of hard because a lot of people want to please the franchise player. Otherwise, he'll go somewhere else because, it's a player league right now because they'll literally leave to go somewhere else. We've seen it with, Anthony Davis and now with James Harden and Ben Simmons and things like that too. So it's kind of a fine line to actually trying to see how well you can do that without upsetting, the guy that you want to, everybody come to see, pay tickets for.
Did Steve Nash get he took a fair amount of criticism for how short they came in terms of everybody kind of pinning them for winning a championship, but did he get just a raw end of the deal when it comes with having to deal with the front office and, like you said, the tumultuous nature of all these players coming in, coming out, Kyrie, there's a lot going on in Brooklyn this year, and there was so much talent there, and ultimately they couldn't do anything with it. But how much of that is just on the circumstance or maybe the front office, and how much of it is on, hey, listen, whether you're Steve Nash or not, like, you have to figure out a way to motivate all these star players to play when you need them to play.
Yeah, I mean, some of that does fall on Steve Nash, but I wouldn't say the entirety. I mean, the front office has some issues that they have to deal with players and things like that too. But it's on the players too. I mean, you can't have situations where, somebody comes in and you don't know if they're going to play this game or not. It's kind of hard as a coaching staff to be able to plan for certain players and game plans, and you don't know, your full staff. And that's kind of hard to do, especially with injury. I mean, it's already hard enough with injuries as well. But the fact that, you have that going on, and then you have the injury bug going on with them, and it just seemed like, then also, unhappy players, and it seemed like a lot kept going on. It was like a snowball effect for Steve Nash and the Brooklyn Nets. But I feel like, this offseason, they can actually, do something better. I know Ben Simmons got back surgery, so hopefully we'll actually see him play next year because, he's a very talented guy, and kind of go from there.
Shelden Williams, thank you so much for the time. I really appreciate your insight into the game and beyond. I appreciate it.
Thank you. I appreciate it for you having me.